Good evening, everyone. Host I would first like to thank the Heaven's grace and our enlightened Holy Teacher's virtues. Thank our grand predecessor, our senior transmitter gene, all transmitters, lecturers, temple hosts, and all of you for this chance to study tonight on the holy mission and legacy of our Grand Patriarch. We are blessed to be living in this white era right now, where Tao is openly propagated to common people like ourselves with affinity. And we owed our grace to Lao Mu and our Grand Patriarch, Suzhun Simu, who were decreed to carry out the Tao lineage that began more than 7,000 years ago. And by studying their virtuous deeds, it helps us appreciate Tao and follow in their first steps to cultivate and propagate steadily. The image on the right side here is our Grand Patriarch from his time on Earth during the White Era. And the one on the left here is our Maitreya Buddha. And Grand Patriarch is the incarnation of Maitreya Buddha. Therefore, although they were born in different times and places, they are of the same Holy Spirit. The affinity of Maitreya Bodhisattva. Our Maitreya Buddha used to be known as Maitreya Bodhisattva when he cultivated together with Sakyamuni Buddha in the past cycle. His appearance on this image here at the bottom right-hand corner, he looked slim. The image above is the better known version of the Maitreya Buddha in modern day. And so Maitreya Bodhisattva is also known as a Jita. Sakyamuni Buddha foretold that Maitreya Bodhisattva would leave before him to go to Tusita heaven to prepare for his future incarnation in the world. And while he was there, Maitreya Bodhisattva would preside over Tusita heaven to teach sentient beings there. Sakyamuni Buddha also foretold that in the future world, Maitreya Bodhisattva would be the Buddha to teach all of the sentient beings that had not become enlightened or been ferried from Sakyamuni Buddha's time. So Maitreya Bodhisattva would come to the world again to attain Buddhahood. And it's also said that before the Buddhas would come to the world to attain Buddhahood, they usually would go to Tusita heaven first to get prepared. Now in this Great Treasures Collection Sutra, Sakyamuni Buddha instructed Maitreya Bodhisattva, and he said, Maitreya, I hereby instruct you 5 periods of 500 years in the future. So that would be 5 times 500. It would be 2,500 years, which would be about the time that we are in now. When belief in the true Dharma wavers, that means that, sentient beings are no longer interested in learning the true principle and following the truth, being captivated by the material life. You must, he said to Maitreya Bodhisattva, you must guard the treasure of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So these are having received the Tao, we know that these are the 3 treasures, right? 3 treasures in us is the Tao, is the true principle, the truth. So he was instructing him that to continue this truth, and you must not let it end. So Maitreya Buddha, here, Sakyamuni Buddha left the instruction for Maitreya Buddha to be his successor and foretold of Maitreya Bodhisattva's special affinity and mission to come in the white period. Now, Maitreya Bodhisattva also cultivated, the way that he cultivated was based on absolute mercy and samadhi. This is a Sanskrit word. Mercy means to take away others' suffering and bring them joy. And we don't change this mindset regardless of how others treat us or what circumstances we come upon. And that is what samadhi is, the great non-attached concentration, which essentially is the expression of our true nature guiding us anytime and anywhere in our daily living. So as we see this majestic form of Maitreya Buddha, he projects such great virtues through the big smile constantly and the big stomach, bearing and dissolving all good and bad. So today we are cultivating and propagating the same exact way as him. We use our mercy and changeless mind to cultivate and propagate. Because the verbal teachings, quite honestly, have little effect on ourselves even, and also others nowadays. Maitreya Bodhisattva took merciful vows also to alleviate sentient beings from suffering, and so he never eat their flesh. So we are following in that same footstep by eating a plant-based diet or, learning to. And Maitreya Bodhisattva also did not meditate and did not cut off afflictions in his cultivation. In fact, he would go all over the places trying to help sentient beings resolve their problems. And the cultivators of his time thought he was really too mundane to be someone special, like Sakyamuni Buddha had foretold that he would be the future Buddha. So this is really similar, right, to our holy teacher Jigong Buddha when he incarnated during the Song dynasty in China. Jigong Buddha also did not meditate and, confine himself to the monastery. He traveled all over the places, mingled with the people from all walks of life. And wherever there was suffering, problem, injustice, he would be there to help and offer his divine wisdom. So therefore, it is really no coincidence that we are grand disciples of our Grand Patriarch, Maitreya Buddha today. And also, we are disciples of our Jigong Living Buddha in this white era. Because it is by virtue of their boundless mercy and affinities established with all the sentient beings from cumulative ages and lives. So today we follow them. Maitreya Buddha and Jigong Living Buddha's exact model of cultivation and propagation with a merciful heart that changeless concentration, and we don't need to meditate and cut off afflictions. In fact, as we cultivate the Tao and progress along the journey, do we have, as Tao cultivators, afflictions? Yes, we do. For example, we worry about the Tao members who don't attend the classes or they don't come to the temple, and that, they go back and forth on their progress in the learning process. And also, sometimes they don't do what they say they would do. So these are, Bodhisattvas don't have afflictions of their own, but they do afflict over sentient beings' problems. We are cultivating that Bodhisattva way as the Buddhas. So just to do a quick review on the golden thread, on really how dearly we are related to our Grand Patriarch. We come from Lao Mu, that essence, right? Our life force, God. But it is through our Grand Patriarch, Sudren Sumu, who incarnated in the world by God's decree to point the way out to us. Right? Otherwise, we would not have received the Tao. So that point transmission let us get out of the reincarnation cycle. Now we're very clear on our origin, and our true mission in life is to fulfill our Tao of humanity and also to cultivate and propagate simultaneously. So on our the background of our Grand Patriarch, he is the first patriarch of the White Era. His last name is Lu, first name Zhongyi, and he was born in the lunar month in April 24th, 1849, in Jining City, within Shandong province. So everyone, Shandong province, we should make a note of that. It's truly a holy site, and it is the birthplace of many sages, like the righteous kings, Lao Tzu, Confucius, right? All of them are in our Tao heritage, those patriarchs. And Confucius' disciples, and more recently, of course, our Grand Patriarch, Sudren Sumu, right there. And it's the Jining Shandong province is also the first place of Tao propagation when the Tao lineage transitioned from the red to the white period, the era. So our Grand Patriarch completed his mission with perfect merits and virtues in on February 2nd, 1925. He attained the Tao, went back to heaven at age 76. And he manifested a childlike purity, meaning that just like this portrait shows, you know, he had gray hair, but his face looked like that of a child. So he was perfectly cultivated and attained enlightenment. And God conferred upon him the holy title, Jin Gong Grand Patriarch. All right, so the affinity and mission of his coming, Grand Patriarch came to the world with two core missions. One was to open a wide era where God decreed to have the Tao made available to all sentient beings who have the affinity. And so although the truth and principles are the same, but the Dharma and practice are different in each of the three eras. So in the white period, one must receive the Tao, being alluded to the three treasures, right? From the enlightened holy teachers and practice. We have to practice accordingly. And as the Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra reveals, the coming of Maitreya is of great significance, right? Is to complete these two holy missions. The Red Era mission has concluded. So in the Red Era, Sakyamuni Buddha was in charge of the heavenly affairs, the universal affairs. And so that transition in 1905 over to the white period where Tao was open. And so that mandate was passed on our Maitreya Buddha in that third period, the white period. And so he also, the second core mission was that he helped to select the 18 Patriarch and 18 Matriarch to get them ready to take on the universal salvation of the three realms. So although the Tao was open, openly, God had decreed for that to be openly propagated, but the actual mission of the universal salvation to the three realms did not really begin officially until 1930 with our patriarch, the 18 Patriarch and 18 Matriarch. And so Grand Patriarch essentially paved the way for that, right, for that great mission to be carried out by the enlightened holy teachers. So during this time, though, our Sujun Sumo and cultivators of that time, went through rigorous tests during the selection process, which we'll talk about later. So the three realms being these three spaces, right? Right now we are here in the physical world. We have a physical body, so we are the luckiest, and it is the easiest for us to receive the Tao and cultivate and propagate. But also the spirits in the underworld, right? And heavenly beings here in the celestial heaven, they also were allowed, right? They also qualified to receive the Tao. On the birth and early life circumstances of our Grand Patriarch. Grand Patriarch was born in a time of wars and unrest, both within China and also the invasions from abroad during that time. And so there were severe destructions to human lives and the infrastructures that took place. It seemed like to no end, right? And we can easily search these historical events. So people suffer everywhere. They lost their homes, families. There were no food, clothing, and basic needs were all robbed from them. So it was really like a living hell. And this is why we hear that Tao is here to rescue calamities, right? Which is why Grand Patriarch chose to incarnate during this time period because of his boundless mercy to lift sentient beings from pain and suffering. So he, due to the circumstances, he lost both of his parents when he was very young. And he had a younger sister whom he lived with. And so they moved outside of the town and really lived in under very, extreme hardship, right? And very not ideal circumstances. But about at this time, the government, remember there were wars everywhere. And so the government was trying to draft people and men, able bodies everywhere to help fight the wars or to even defend the country. So the government handed out, they set up different stations, right, big and small everywhere in the communities and towns and cities. So they were giving out living expense allowances to those who joined the military. So Grand Patriarch received that allowance, which he used to provide for his sister. So he helped her also later find us when she came of age. About that time, he was about 22. So he helped her find a husband and secure her livelihood, right? So he really made sure that she was cared for before he took off. So from here, we learn that Grand Patriarch fulfilled his filial duty and his fraternal duties, right? You know, he really helped his parents. He was the older brother, so he helped his parents take care of his younger sister. And this is what we call the Tao of humanity, right? That to cultivate Tao, we first must fulfill the Tao of humanity. And this is what Buddha would advise us to do. So he already set up a great example for us to follow. So when that was all said and done, he joined the military in like 1870. And due to his virtuous character, he was quickly promoted to a ranking position within his post. Okay, so he stayed with the military for about 25 years until he was about 46, 47 in 1895. His affinity matured. And so Lao Muga came to guide him personally. So it was in the form of a dream. So Lao Mu, you know, appeared in his dream and instructed him to leave the military employment without further delay, and told him to seek the 16th enlightened the patriarch, right, Patriarch Liu, to receive the Tao in a place called Qinzhou, which would be south of where he was stationed. And so, yeah, he had this identical dream for 3 nights consecutively. So he knew, right? So he had enough wisdom and faith to act upon this revelation from Lao Mu. So everyone, when we receive the Tao, right, our affinity also mature, and that's why we met our introducer who brought us to receive the Tao. So Grand Patriarch followed Lao Mu's instruction, packed up and gathered all his savings of about 100 taels of silver. Then he left the military. He started to travel south. Along the way, which is very, very interesting, he would dream of heavenly beings, the saints that pointed him where to go as he took rest at different stops. So sort of, you know, Saint and Buddha sort of serve as his GPS, right? So we use GPS nowadays, but not back then. So he traveled for a while, and until perhaps it was nearing the destination that Lao Mu wanted him to be. That night, the heavenly being came again to instruct him, you know, on this day, go by the foot of the mountain where, you know, you will meet the 16th Patriarch and you shall receive the Tao from him. And at the same time, the 16th Patriarch also dreamed of a heavenly being telling him to go by the foot of that mountain on such a day, and you shall meet a great worthy. So sure enough, when the time came, the two men, they met, right, precisely at the same place that was instructed. So now, Grand Patriarch's intent or purpose was very clear. He came to receive the Tao from the 16th Patriarch. However, when the 16th Patriarch met him, he hesitated and he questioned, because of the way he looked, right? He questioned whether he was that great worthy the heavenly being told him in a dream. So he thought that, you know, Grand Patriarch appeared very plain. There was nothing special about him. He looked like someone from the countryside. And he wore this wool hat and had an old and beat up cotton coat that he had on. And he was carrying just a simple old bag for his belongings. As Patriarch Liu was thinking, Grand Patriarch walked right up to him very decisively and asked if that was a place where he could receive Tao. So Patriarch Liu didn't think at the time that Grand Patriarch had what it took, right, to receive the Tao. So he just said casually, you want to receive the Tao? It will cost you 100 taels of silver. And Grand Patriarch replied without hesitation. He said, 100 taels of silver, it is. I want to receive the Tao. So Patriarch Liu was surprised at his determination and certainty. So he asked Grand Patriarch, okay, you can follow me up to the mountain, to the temple. And there, Grand Patriarch handed all of his savings to the Patriarch Liu, which was 100 taels of silver. So after he received the Tao, the Patriarch Liu, he told him, okay, I transmitted the Tao to you. You can go now. You know, like when we come to the temple, right, we see the Tao, then we go home after that. But Grand Patriarch is different. He's homeless, right? Remember, so he hesitated. He said, oh, I have given all my savings to you, teacher. Now I don't have anything left. I'm homeless. Can I stay here? Maybe to do some work. So Patriarch Liu, he felt very bad because he'd taken all his money, saving. That was like his retirement money. So he felt like he had no choice but to, you know, keep him. So he asked him, what can you do? And our Grand Patriarch said, well, I'm illiterate, but, you know, I can do manual work, right? Manual labor. So Patriarch Liu said, okay, then you can stay in the back of the firewood shed. You can gather woods, cut woods to cook and fetch water and work in the kitchen. So Grand Patriarch accepted all of his teacher's assignments and worked diligently for 10 years without any complaint. So everyone, let's pause for a second here. That is true sincerity and effort on Grand Patriarch's part that is worthy of our learning. And this also reflects his complete faith in Lao Mu, right? Remember, Lao Mu told him to come here, right? And so this is where we see the Tao manifested in Grand Patriarch so very profoundly. The things he did, you know, he worked in the kitchen, doing the lowly work that a lot of people would consider that, right? But it's through his being ordinary, usual, plain, and practical that we see the divinity of Tao personifying through him. And so, you know, he did not have an ego, right? So he didn't think that, oh, Lao Mu guided him personally to the mission, right? He didn't think, oh, I'm a very important person. I should hold a certain position, right? He was none of that. He was very humble, sincere, and he lived a simple life. And he worked in the kitchen, serving everyone's needs. So it reminds us of a lecture that we used to study from the Dharma of True Nature from Lecture Liu. He talked about the Diamond Sutra, the opening paragraph describing Buddha traveling with his disciples to beg for food, right, every day. And after he got the food, you know, they go back, right, and into their place of cultivation, and he would sit, right, he cleaned his hands and then put away, you know, they would eat, and then he would put away his bowl and he would just sit, right? So very simple daily activities. But it's through those simple things that we do that we can, you know, find the true principles that, like Lecturer Liu said, right? We find the highest principle, right? The true Dharma in the very ordinary things that we do. So in that way, you know, these true principles are incorporated into our daily living, right? That's Tao. That's what cultivating Tao means, that we don't have a form of ego, the self-ego. And Lecturer Liu said, if we possess the self-ego, then we would not be able to cultivate the Tao truthfully, right? So cultivation for us is in the daily living. Do what we're supposed to do the very simple things, and don't feel bored or be dreaded by them. And we can also find the same parody in the holy book, the Analects. On book 7, there are 2 verses that really inspire this class. So verse 7:1, where Confucius states, I merely relate the true principles left behind by the ancient sages. I did not create anything new. I trust and love them. I quietly compare myself to old Pang. So Confucius Yes, that's exactly what the Tao is, right? He is sincere to accept and practice them in daily living, the principles that pass down from the generational patriarchs. And this is how he came to love them, because he practiced them, because he tested them and he found absolute truth in them, right? So in short, he experienced the effect of Tao by incorporating the true principles in his daily living. And just like when we attend the classes, right? Sometimes, we have this mindset to attend the class for entertainment, and we think, oh yeah, this lecturer or transmitter, they're speaking so touchingly, or, their material is so good. And then I remember there was a Tao member that talked about that. She come to classes, and she said, why you guys are talking about the same thing every single time? Do you have new things to talk about? Right. And I remember the transmitter was very wise and told her, the reason why you feel like that is because you have not put the principles into practice, right? If we do practice the principles, we are going to personally experience the preciousness of these principles in changing the way we think, and really changing our behaviors for the better. And when we're able to overcome those human nature habits, like bad temper, bad habits, we feel so proud of ourselves, right? So we would love to hear the same principles and not get tired of it. And the next verse, Confucius said, disciples, do you think that I have concealed good things from you and not teach you? I conceal nothing from you. There's nothing which I do that is not shown to you. My disciples, that is my way. So here, Confucius is really telling them that, go back to the basic, right? Do what we're supposed to do. But his disciples had doubts that Confucius might be hiding certain teachings from them. Why? Because in their minds, right, Confucius was this really larger than life figure. And they really questioned whether they could be as great as he was just by doing those simple things, those daily living tasks that he taught them to do. So yeah, indeed, the things that sages teach us in the classics, they're very ordinary, usual, plain, and practical, which are easy and absolutely doable. They will not teach us how to, for example, how to become a lawyer or an architect, for example, right? So the problem is, do we want to do these simple things day in and day out, right? To really help nurture our sense of the true self. So yeah, like, for example, do we want to be trustworthy, right? That's very daily living, like, or, or are we just trustworthy when we can gain something, and then, break that trustworthiness when we feel that we are losing out, right? So all of these things are in our daily living that exemplify those really the true principles. So like our Grand Patriarch, who accepted his task, he did what he was supposed to. He went out to gather woods, fetch water, cook, clean, serve for 10 years without any complaints, right? It's really hard to imagine. Sometimes when we are told to do something over and over again, we get really annoyed, right? So yeah, we can learn so much from Grand Patriarch. And personally, we should be touched by him. I am touched by him completely when we study his story. We can envision, right, his bright virtue, and it would be such an honor to even meet him for once. So this is why we feel a lot of the, our seniors in the Tao community, they're so inspired to carry out the Tao mission because of the fact that they're inspired by the Grand Patriarch and Suzhun Sumu, right? So yeah, this is true Tao cultivation that we learned from Grand Patriarch, that, is to take our duties sincerely, honestly, and responsibly. And really, there is no, high dharma or, some fancy way or shortcut like this. There are no stops to pull. Just do the simple things, what we're supposed to do. The transmission of the Tao lineage. So Patriarch Liu reached an age where he thought he should plan, right, for a successor in 1898. So he, in those days, he took to the Zen writing and asked Lao Mu, who, you know, the successor would be to carry on the Dao lineage. And Lao Mu said, he is that great worthy is right in front of you. Right? So Patriarch Liu, he didn't know who it was, right? And then he asked again, who is it? And Lao Mu said, it is not time yet to reveal who it is, right? But Lao Mu did compose this poem here. It states, if you are asking where Maitreya is, carefully observe Lake Chujiang. So right off the bat, Lao Mu revealed that this successor is the incarnation of Maitreya Buddha, right, with such extraordinary affinity. And Chujiang is the name of a place, right? So it's sort of like a metaphor to say, you know, really use our wisdom to observe and see who it is, right? And then Lao Mu described this person, right? Okay, he wears a wool hat. Okay, everyone, does that jog a memory when those two patriarchs met initially? Dresses in ordinary clothes, he speaks truthfully, and so he was it's like so plain, right? There's nothing extraordinary about him, and constantly donates his humanity and righteousness. So he was very virtuous. And the next two verses is sort of a play with the words, right? But Lao Mu said, stare upon the road. So the road in Chinese is pronounced as Lu, right? So, and Lu, okay, this character happens to be the last name of our Grand Patriarch, right? If we recall, with both eyes. In the middle is a point, right? So this is kind of actually also talking about the first treasure. So in the middle, the middle is Zhong, right here, this character, and Yi, right, the 1 point. So if we combine them, I have put them here below, Lu Zhong Yi, right? So yeah, she revealed the name of the successor. The sun and moon together witness clearly, Ren, Gong are held in his hand. So in short, because of the language, right? Essentially, Lao Mu was revealing in the poem, right? This holy poem that this successor, he would hold the two markings in his hand, right? And these are the two markings, which happen to mean the covenant, right? Okay, so Patriarch Lu, I mean, in those days, yeah, now we look at it, we know, oh, wow, this is, yeah, Lao Mu already revealed. But in those days, Patriarch Liu, he really didn't comprehend it at first, right? And so he was thinking and sleeping on it. And so he focused on the last two verses. And one day, he seemed to realize Lao Mu's scripture pointed to the markings, right, in the successor's hand, like just like this image here. So the her is here and Tong is here. Now that Tong is, you know, also there were two separate characters, but if you stack this one, this means Yuan, and then stack it on top of here, it becomes this character. So he seemed to realize something, right? So then he quickly instructed all his disciples to clean their hands and then come back to the temple to let him check. But none of the disciples had those markings. So then he started to think and think again. But at the same time, Grand Patriarch was working in the kitchen, and he seemed to have some inspiration of his own, because he suddenly, you know, washed his hands really clean, right? And then he flew right into the main temple. He showed his hands to the Patriarch and asked him to see if they're clean. Patriarch didn't really want to, you know, look at his hands, but he did take a look nonetheless. And shockingly, he saw those two very words, those two markings in Grand Patriarch's hand. And then also, Lao Mu, again, you know, in the same writing, urged him and said, you know, do not hesitate, transfer that heavenly mandate to Zhong Yi, right? Zhong Yi is Grand Patriarch's first name. So this is more apparent who it is now. He must return to his birthplace to propagate the Tao without further delay. And so Patriarch Liu now, you know, he's really sure who the successor is, right? But, you know, among so many disciples, he wanted to shield Grand Patriarch from any harm, so he protected him. And that's why he's purposely said to him, even after he found out that Grand Patriarch is the one, he said, how can you have these markings? Like really, kind of being a little bit condescending, right? On purpose. And then he told all the other disciples who, okay, you guys can go, so it is on this holy day, March 15, 1905, a very crucial year, that happened to be Lao Mu's spring anniversary. At nighttime, Patriarch Liu called Grand Patriarch to the temple and secretly transmitted the Tao lineage to him. So now Grand Patriarch became the 17th Patriarch, and also the Buddha that would oversee that holds that heavenly post, inheriting from my Sakyamuni Buddha, right, overseeing the universal affairs. Okay, so after a while, Patriarch Liu gathered his disciples and told them, I'm getting old and the Tao propagation is waning down. There's nothing I can do to, support this temple any further. So he told them, you can, go your own ways. So some went back to their hometown, to their mundane life, and others continue to cultivate and propagate. But only our Grand Patriarch had no place to go. Right? So he felt so sad. Everybody had a home to go back to, and he didn't. So he asked the 16th Patriarch, Patriarch Liu, if they could seek advice from God, from Lao Mu, where he shall go. So Lao Mu composed this in the sandbox. It is now the last calamity in the third period, right, the third era. Time for universal salvation. So the universal salvation came from here, from God's instruction. A path connects all throughout the great land and rivers. So this is talking about, that golden thread. Yes, the Tao, right? That it would spread, widely all over the world. Steer the Dharma both through clear water. So clear water, water when it's clear is calm, right? So this also means that, this is the right time, right? The affinity is here now. Set the base in Shandong. So Shandong is a province where he was born, right? And in Guanyin Nunnery. So when our Grand Patriarch heard Guanyin Nunnery, that's for female cultivators. So he was a man, right? He thought that's now maybe not appropriate for him to go. So then he thought, okay, he thought of his sister, right, whom he had separated for more than 30 years. So he traveled back to Jining city in Shandong. And after he inquired and really tried to find out where his sister was, one day, he was in this place, right, where Lao Mu said, the place of the nunnery, the Guanyin Nunnery. And that's exactly where he met his sister. But his sister didn't recognize him and thought, well, he had, he's now a lot older and he looked different. But then he sort of reminded her, he spoke of their childhood to, the difficult life they had and the circumstances, and all of those things that nobody would have known except for the two of them. So then she realized, oh, this is really her brother. And so, yeah, Grand Patriarch, transmitted the Tao to his sister and her two sons and her husband. And then they set up a home temple in his sister's house. So it's very divine, right? That, God, foretold that even the place where they met, it came true. So yeah, Grand Patriarch, borrowing the affinity of his sister and her family and the people they knew, right, back home there. So that set a, helped to lay the foundation of their starting the Tao community there. So he had a lot of disciples in, when it was all mature, that he had thousands of disciples follow him to cultivate the Tao. And then Patriarch Liu, of course, had already disclosed to his sister that, God guided him to receive the Tao, and he was an incarnation of Maitreya Buddha, and then he also is the patriarch, right, for this white period. and he had a mission to develop the Tao missions on behalf of heaven, right? So she and her families, her two sons later on also, they were ordained to become transmitting master, helping with this Tao propagation. Okay, so on the before Grand Patriarch went back to heaven, achieving enlightenment, he reached the old age, like the patriarch before him. So he was thinking that this lineage must be passed down to the next successor, right? But he had so many disciples. He had 8 chief disciples, but thousands of disciples. So he couldn't really identify easily who was cultivating truthfully to inherit the Tao lineage, right? To shoulder on that holy mission for heaven. So he thought about testing them. In those days, right, the patriarch would test the next patriarch. So he made up a story, right? He said he had a tumor, right, in his throat that he couldn't swallow food anymore. It's kind of like esophageal cancer in today's terms. And so he told them, you know what, this Tao is not true because I have devoted my entire life to the Tao. I'm so disheartened to learn that, I end up with this terminal illness. I acted according to God's will and instruction, and still I was not blessed and protected by heaven. So he told them, yeah, you don't have to follow the strict precepts anymore, right? Then on another occasion, he also tested them and said, you know what, now the war is over. Good times are here now. You don't have to stay here. You could leave the Tao community. And you don't have to follow these precepts, right? So yeah, let's all go to the market, right? Buy a lot of meat and let's have a feast, right? To celebrate. And so they came back with the meat, the disciples, and they cooked. And then Grand Patriarch said, come on, eat, right? Everyone eat. And he also pretended to eat. So the disciples saw him eating, right? His other disciples. They thought, oh yeah, we must respect the teacher and just follow whatever he says, right? Except for our Suzhen Sumu, right? Those two holy teachers. They recognize it's a test, right? And so they pretended, Grand Patriarch was pressuring them to eat, right? And they pretended they had a stomach ache. So they said, no, we're not going to eat it. And Patriarch thought, oh, and he also, played the part. He said, you dare to defy me, right? So our Suzhen Sumu kneel down and said, no, we're not defying you. We really can't eat them. So, but secretly, Grand Patriarch was very happy, right? He found the successors, right? In a way, he knew that they were true cultivators and leaders, right, of these Tao missions. But the other disciples, yeah, they really failed the test. They didn't have wisdom. So today too, when we cultivate the Tao, right, everyone, we also have tests. Except now we will be tested by heaven, right, through people and matters, right? So everyone, we should, be aware the next time, for example, when we come to the temple, wherever there are people and matters, that there will be some misunderstanding, conflicts, right? But we should recognize, right? For example, if somebody says something to us, right, a senior, admonish us or point out a mistake, we should not feel offended. And then we tell ourselves, who is she to tell me that? Or we think, I'm not coming to the temple anymore. So yeah, just recognize that it is a test, right? So go above that and then we shall pass it. People and matters, they come and go, right? It's not constant, but we hold on to our true mind. That's the constant. Okay, achieving Tao and delegating the heavenly mandate. When 17th Patriarch would be our Grand Patriarch, he returned to heaven in 1925. He didn't leave any instruction for a successor. So his senior leaders, right? He had a lot of senior leaders. they took to the sand writing, right? I would imagine, and asked the patriarch to come back and tell them who the successor is. And so patriarch came back, right? Our Grand Patriarch came back and told them, just wait, okay? and I will come back with a message in the future. But before the time that he told them to wait, these leaders, they grew very impatient because they're thinking that they have high merits and virtues and they've cultivated many years. And so they were getting like greedy, right? They were ambitious for power, perhaps. And they actually felt like, one of them should be that successor. So without following the instruction of Grand Patriarch, they, again, took the Zen writing, and this time they asked Lao Mu to come to the temple and tell them who the successor is. So Lao Mu got really angry with them and told them, you all have the mandate, right? So, well, of course, they failed that test miserably because, they really believed this. So a lot of them left the Tao community. Some couldn't develop the Tao affairs any further, and some, passed away. Some still, they try to set up their own shops, right? And only our Sujun Sumo, right, our holy teachers, they obey, right, the Grand Patriarch's instruction, God's instruction. And then a bit later, God did ask Grand Patriarch to bring back the message, right, in the human world that the heavenly mandate would be temporarily held by his sister, his younger sister, Lu Zhongjie, right? And so our Sujun Sumo worked the most, right, in developing the Tao missions, and they report, sincerely to his sister, Lu Zhongjie. And then there's also a fact that later on the Buddha channeled through, right? 1938, I believe, they also reveal the special affinity of Lu Zhongjie, his younger sister, was in fact the incarnation of Guan Yin Pusa. Because we know Grand Patriarch was the incarnation of Maitreya Buddha. So both of them came with really extraordinary affinities. All right. And so now something happened, right? So, Lao Mu said 12 years, right, that she would upkeep the heavenly mandate. But in fact, she became ill and she was on her way to return to heaven. But others didn't know, right? So Sujun Sumo didn't know. But then through the Zen writing, they learned that. So in 1930, right, 6 years later, it wasn't 12 years. But the 6 years coincide with the yin and yang, right, calculations. So it's both, right, adding up. So that made it 12 years. And so it is in that year, 1930, that this mandate was officially decreed upon our 18 patriarch and 18 matriarchs, our Shizhen and Sumo. Okay, so now Grand Patriarch returned to heaven, having completed his holy mission, but he's still like all the Buddhas, right? They can't bear to see us suffer, and they wanted to help us. So even they achieved Buddhahood, they want to come back, right? They want to assist the Tao missions. And so Grand Patriarch came back to the human world in the Revelations. The Buddha called it the golden rooster, crows 3 times. Right? Golden rooster is referring to him, the Grand Patriarch. Crows 3 times, meaning that he will show himself in the world 3 times after achieving Buddhahood. And the first time he came to the world was on March 3rd, 1926. That's interesting because it's exactly 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day, right, from the time that he went back to heaven. So his Holy Spirit channeled through this medium's body called Mr. Yang Chunling in Shandong Jining, right, his hometown in those Tao communities. So he would, it was said that, and this is, the story is all by the account of our Lao Tianyan, right, that passed down this oral history of Grand Patriarch. So he channeled 3 for 100 days without sleeping, without eating, right? So we know this goes against the law of physics, right, everyone? Even the law of cause and effect, right? You don't eat and you don't sleep for 100 days for us, that we probably might end up dead, right? But the Buddhas, of course, they're divine. And the body is just a tool, right? So they can use the body. So during this time, he also spoke the Jingong Future Profound Sutra. So this sutra talks about the future, right? What all the events that will take place happen, and what we should do, right, to cultivate and propagate, and to make really to turn the world around, right? And then he also spoke of the Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra. And this is a very special sutra. As Tao cultivators, we should recite the sutra daily. Because this sutra embodies all of that, the bright energy, the merciful vows, the loving kindness, compassion, right, of all of our Grand Patriarch, and also including all the patriarchs and saints and Buddhas. And also it is a blueprint, right, that God had pretty much, right, planned out this white period propagation and cultivation for all of us. And also it's like a manual, right? A manual for us, the Tao cultivators, how to turn the world around and change our destiny and all such great things. So it has that wonderful energy, right? That great energy. If we read it, right, we can be touched, you know, by that merciful energy of all the Buddhas. And so I also have a story to share. Once we followed Transmitter Rong to this man's house, right? So they were going to receive the Tao, and we had to set up a temporary temple to do the blessing. And when we asked this wife to fill out the Tao with registration form, she suddenly lost control of her body. And she forcefully grabbed her own hair and pulled it so hard that we were afraid that she would pull them off her head. Then she jabbed at her own body with her fingers so hard, right, bruising herself at different spots. And then she folded and curled the lower legs, her calves backwards so hard that it looked like she was gonna snap her legs off. And we were very nervous. We didn't know what was happening, so we thought she was having a seizure, right? So we asked her husband, and her husband said, yeah, this happens from time to time. And he would have to call the emergency. But our transmitter had enough, she had wisdom, and she said, okay, everyone, let's read the Maitreya Rescue Sutra. So sure enough, we read it one time, and before we started the second time, this lady fell asleep, right? And so peacefully. And then when it was time for her to kneel down in front of the altar to get the blessing, her husband just tapped her lightly, and she woke up like she had been sleeping for 8 hours, you know, refreshed. And then she forgot what had happened. So yeah, Maitreya Buddha's merciful kindness, you know, in these situations can help people. So the second crow is when Grand Patriarch channeled through somebody called Du Yukun for 30 days, right? Again, traveling all over the Tao communities to help Sujun Sumo really lay the firm foundation, right, to build conviction in cultivators and Tao leadership members to spread the Tao for heaven and save all sentient beings. And the third crow is the third time that he will show in the world, is when he will come in the future, right, to unite all the religions. Remember, all religions teach the essence of Tao, right, the true principles of Tao. So we must go back to the one in order to resolve, right, all the differences and restore peace. So at that time, the Tao will spread to all, and the world unity prevails. All right, so in conclusion, we borrow our Grand Patriarch's Jingong Zhuzi's merciful scripture. The gold and jade temple of glorious splendor requires everyone's support and effort to guide. This is talking about right, that collective radiance and energy of God and of all saints and Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, cultivators, that all upholding the blessing in the form of the temples, right? Temples or places of Tao cultivation, propagation. All of these sites, the temples, have their support and protection from God and Buddhas. And it's also referring to our true nature, which is like a mobile temple, right, that stays with us anytime and anywhere. So on one hand, we need to support the hardware temple, right, like the temple, Happy Buddha Precious Temple, our headquarter temple, and all the temples in different places. So support by cultivating and propagating Tao to others. And then in doing so, we are also radiating our own inner temple. The will of Qigong disciple is set on the ideal of a utopian world. So the will of our holy teachers, right? We are his disciples. And that is the purpose of Tao, right? The Confucian ideal of world harmony. It is our own very own will, right? That expression of our true nature to restore world harmony and perfect all of our affinities, right? Continue the Grand Patriarch's legacy, one must honor the source and undertake the missions. Grand Patriarch has laid that foundation, right? He began in 1905 with the universal open propagation of universal salvation. So we must not let his effort go in vain. Appreciate how far we have come, right? And support the Tao missions to let it continue past to eternity, right? Throughout the generations. Resolve to seek a holy teacher even if one is well learned. Manifest wisdom and courage. Progress with great humanity. So all learned knowledge, as we know, right? They help our body, support the body, make a living. But the learned knowledge cannot help us bypass the reincarnation cycle and suffering. We must receive that point transmission from our holy teachers, right, to return to our origin. Then we can develop, right? We have like GPS, right? We have the point of origination. We know clearly, right, our paths. Then we can develop our wisdom and courage to carry out the Tao missions. And we are fortunate to be part of this, the heavenly movement, right, if you will. The best way to honor our Grand Patriarch's legacy is to support the Tao missions, right? Cultivate and propagate the Tao to others. And if everyone practices the Tao principles, we will all restore our true nature and dissolve conflicts in our minds, in our interpersonal relationships, and really truly restore peace in our world. So this concludes our study tonight. I ask for God and Grand Patriarch's forgiveness if I have spoken anything incorrectly, and ask for transmitter to correct me, and also our lecturers to supplement any information. Thank you. 后学 would like to 感谢天师的，感谢老前言前大德，感谢金老点师及各位点师 and our lecturers, temple hosts, and everyone for this opportunity. Thank you.